Austin.
I'm Chase. And I'm Tony.
This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and today we're back out in the shop to modify our lawn and garden trailer into a lean, mean, mud mowing logging machine. Both of these trailers were purchased from Tractor Supply Company, and like I said, they're fantastic. We love them. But one of the major things that happens on both is this. The wheel bearings just go away after a while. This one actually has the front stock wheels from Stefan's Wheel Horse. And when we switched out for the John Deere front axle, he put those wheels from his stock axle on this thing, and it's been wonderful ever since. We actually haven't even used this one. So what we got to replace it is this stuff here. I got a 1-inch go-kart axle. I got some pillow block bearings. I've got a 6-inch go-kart disc brake. These rims and tires came from an old Murray garden tractor I found up at the local scrapyard. It's gonna donate its rear tires for this cause. And we have a mechanical disc brake caliper for it. Let's get this thing torn apart, get to work. Now that the wheels and tires are off this thing, we're going to continue tearing it apart. We're going to completely remove this structure right here, which supports the old axle. We're going to remove the hitch and also this hitch support that lets it dump. It has a dump feature. So another thing I noticed is that a lot of the factory welds are busted. Like that one right there, this one here, this one over here, this one over here. So this thing's basically falling apart anyways, because let's face it, this thing gets banged around quite a bit. But the only thing that's gonna be left is the body of this thing. Boys made quick work of this thing. We got it all stripped down to the bare chassis. So the main thing we want to do, and we chose the smaller trailer, is to keep it lightweight for going up. We're putting brakes on it to help it, once it has weight in it, to come down. Now, we weighed this thing yesterday with a couple of bathroom scales under the tires, and with the tires it had on it and everything we just took off of it, it weighed 80 pounds. I'm gonna go and see how much it weighs right now. All right, let's see here. Not bad. We'll call that 223 pounds. $268. So 268 minus 223. I can't count that high on both hands, guys. Cole, how much does that weigh?
45 pounds.
45 pounds. So we're starting out with 45 pounds. Let's get this hardware on it and see what it weighs after. Bet you guys haven't seen one of these in a while. We got this thing up here on the sawhorses and it's all mocked up relatively close to how it's going to be. So we're going to use this steel channel. This is 1 5/8 unistrut to space the axle up off of the floor of this so that the brake can fit. Now, I was on the fence about using the stock hitch, this steel channel here, but it's pretty flimsy and it was twisting around in the past. So I was gonna put this steel channel inside of it and bolt it all together. But I think I'm going to abandon this piece of metal and just use the steel unistrut, and we'll fit the hitch receiver onto the unistrut instead of having this underneath it. That'll also save some weight. And the other reason we're using the unistrut is to make this thing more rigid. This is only 1/16 inch sheet metal, and the unistrut will give the axle something flat to sit on. It'll also stiffen up the whole frame of this, that sheet metal. And I think having a unistrut channel from the back to the front and the center for the hitch will also be beneficial. So we're gonna go ahead and take off the hitch receiver, or the 2-inch ball hitch, and start mocking this thing up and start getting some of this stuff bolted into place. Side, yeah, right there. Push super hard. All right. Good job. Great job, Crush. got the main part of our axle support structure. We got it bolted to the sheet metal here, and I noticed as I was tightening up the bolts, it was sucking up all that waviness in the sheet metal. So it brought this thing back to being more true. We've got our hitch starting to come together. What we're gonna do for the sides, instead of filling this in with something, we're just gonna drill through the unistrut and put a long bolt or some rod through there, and we'll take up the space next to the unistrut in between this hitch with an actual 1/2 inch nut. So it'll all just be bolted together like that. That'll be that problem solved. I'm gonna add a 90-degree reinforcement fitting right here. And then once that's done, we're gonna start fitting the axle up. And we're gonna do something also, we need to add a piece of unistrut on the outside of these pieces of strut. So imagine this was strut, we're gonna add it out here on the side, and I'm gonna weld this piece of strut to the main support strut. Because if I don't have that, I'm gonna have a bearing here on this piece, and then there's gonna be about 2 inches of unsupported axle on the outside. And the tire can't get any closer to this without rubbing. So I need a little piece in here, an extension basically. So the pillow block bearing can be here, not here. And then the piece that's here will be welded, like I said, and also I'll support it back to the sheet metal. So it'll have plenty of strength. We're gonna make those modifications. See you in a minute. I'm trying to find my axle placement with this. And there was one thing I never liked about these trailers from the factory was they had the axle right in the middle, right in the center of this box. And for some reason, it always just wanted to flip up and be on its back side. And we want this thing to be more tongue heavy. So I'm gonna move the axle back 2 inches. The center would be 20 inches on this. I'm putting it at 22. And here's what I was talking about. So we're also adding these 4-hole 1/4 inch steel plates. This is also a product of Unistrut or B-line, but this is how it's gonna look. So we're gonna put that on a piece of strut here, and then it's going to ride on the outside, like I was saying, of this piece. So that way, the tire can go, the axle can be supported all the way up to the edge of the rim, and it'll support the axle better. There won't be any stick out, and the tire will be able to clear and be inside of this piece of strut we're adding. I took this off the trailer because once I start welding this, I'm gonna weld it right along up here on top, and then I also need to weld the bottom side right here. I'm not gonna weld the whole thing all the way across, probably just some stitch welds, but I can't get to it while it's on there bolted in. So we'll do it over here on the welding table. Ready to start fitting the axle on here, and as you can see, we've got all our frame support pieces, our axle support pieces in place. Everything's bolted up tight, everything feels nice and solid. Here's our extensions to get our bearings out so that we can support the wheels better, and Stefan added these 90-degree fittings here to stiffen this whole thing up. If you look over here, Stefan added this 90-degree fitting here, and then we just added this in. This is for the 7/8 version of this strut. I did not have an 1 5/8 version. So what I did was I cut some rod couplings to fit in between, and we put a plate on the other side to sandwich this whole thing together. And now the hitch is very, very stout. And if you're looking right here, we used 1/2-inch rod and bolted this whole thing through. So we're good to go on the structure. Now we're gonna set the axle up on there and get it into position. Got the axle, the bearings all bolted up, everything's lined up perfect. We've got it square on the frame. We've got our disc brake here with a key in it. We don't know where it's gonna be exactly, so we're just gonna put it here for now and we can slide it around a little bit. We've got a shaft collar on each side. We've got a machine bushing against each bearing. The next thing we're gonna do is slide the wheels back on. It's not every day I get to bust out my 3/4 inch impact, but these nuts that go on the end of the axle are 1.5 inch. That happens to be the biggest impact socket I have. All right, I want to give you all a little overview of our setup here with the axle. So on this side, we've got our pillow block bearing. Then in between the wheel and the pillow block bearing, we've got a 1-inch machine bushing. On the outside over here, we've got another 1-inch machine bushing. The keyway is already installed. And this spacer right here happens to be a piece of 1-inch EMT, electrical metallic tubing. The internal diameter is exactly 1 inch. So we've got that spacer, another machine bushing, and then that locking nut. So the way we're making these perfectly square is with a tubing cutter. And that'll interface with the machine bushings in the back of that nut, so everything's nice and clean. This is a Milwaukee Fuel 3/4 inch drive impact wrench. And as you can see here, we've got our spacer, our machine bushings, and here's our nut ready to go on. The axle and the reinforcing we've done is finished. I want to take this thing out in the driveway and try it out, because now that it has a solid axle and it's keyed, I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to pull around corners. I just want to see this thing on the ground and how it looks on the back of a tractor. So come in here and check this out though. This is basically the finished product of what we did. So you can see we got the pillow block bearings right up next to the rim. The only thing between the bearing and the rim is a 1-inch machine bushing. So we've got 3/8 hardware. We've got our brake disc set up here with a shaft collar on each side. Everything spins nice and free. The hitch is all done. Everything's super hardcore, super stout. And I think we kept it as light as possible while still making it stout. So let's get this thing down and get it behind a tractor, take it outside. As you guys just saw, I just got done taking this thing up and down the road over some little obstacles here with these three in the back. And I gotta say, I was a little skeptical at first because just pulling it around in the shop with this straight solid axle, it does have resistance as it should, trying to pull it left and right. But once it's hooked up to the tractor and it's moving and you're just doing gradual turns and stuff, it ain't no big deal. This thing actually pulls really nice. It's easier to back up because the tires can't spin independently. It can't just jackknife. So I love this thing. The next thing we got to do is take it back in there and figure out how to get the brakes working on this thing, because that's the main idea behind it. So what do you guys think? You ready to go work on it some more?
Yeah.
All right. I think Crusher wants to try it out on his tractor too before we do that. So let's get to it.
Daddy, let's go for one more ride.
One more ride?
Down that way.
I'll take you guys for a ride.
That way.
All right, we got the trailer back up in here in the shop. We're starting to work on the brakes. Check this out. So here's our brake caliper. I've got it bolted with pressure on the pads to where we want it. We're gonna put a cross member here and we're gonna support it with this piece of angle. Now, we came in here just in the nick of time because a monsoon hit us. But we got Crusher out there playing in it. So excuse me if I'm yelling a little bit louder. It's pretty loud in here. So like I was saying, we're gonna get this cross member bolted up, and then we're gonna add a piece of here to support this. And then we're gonna work on the cable after. All right, we got the brake support mocked up. Like I said before, we've got this piece of strut going from that one to that one. We've got these 3-hole L brackets to hold it. This is our L bracket that's going to hold the actual caliper mount. This thing can slide because it's meant to let the caliper move a little bit. So what we want to do is, I'm not going to use the bowl holes in this thing because they don't line up with this and I don't feel like messing around with that. So what I'm going to do is take this over and grind the paint off the back. And then I'm gonna take the finish off the back of this L bracket, get it all back in here where I want it, and I'm gonna tack weld it right onto that. Then I'll take it off of here, take it over to the bench, and throw some stitch welds around it. It should be good to go. All right, we got this thing all set up to where it's ready to be tack welded. Check this out. So we've got our cross member right here with our 3-hole brackets. We've got this clamped, and if you watch here, the brake is not under any pressure. It can still move freely on its bracket. And so what I'm gonna do is come in here with the welder and tack it in a few places, probably the 4 corners. Then I'll take it back off, take it over to the bench, and I'll weld it. And we're also gonna add a piece of strut, maybe about 6 inches right here. So the end of this bracket has something to bolt to. And then we'll also bolt it to the sheet metal. So this thing will be nice and stout, and it shouldn't be able to bend. If anything, since it is just a 90-degree bracket, it is 1/4 inch thick. What I'll do, I can always put something from here to here and gusset it. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's take it off here first, get that going. All right, let's take it over to the bench and weld it for real. before I even take this back over and put it on there, I just got this feeling it's gonna need a gusset. So I got this piece of bar left over from another project, and I've already fit it as best I could. I'm gonna cut it here, cut it there, put it in there and weld it in. You want to make sure you spray paint it while it's still hot from the welding. That way the paint will dry faster. All right, check it out. The brake caliper mount's all fabbed up. We painted it so it wouldn't flash rust. Should be good to go. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. The brake caliper's here. Stefan, if you would, a little demonstration. Get it going fast. All right, ready? So the next thing we got to do, I already have this bike brake handle, and this is the cable that I bought for it. It's an 81-inch cable. What we're going to do is drill a hole right through this piece of unistrut. We're going to drill a big hole on this side. I've got some rubber grommets over in my stash. We'll drill a small hole on this side, just big enough for the cable to fit through. We'll put a 1/4-20 right in that brake lever. We'll drill a hole through it with a lock nut, and that'll hold the cable. The cable is gonna pass through here, the sheath. It's gonna rest right up against there. And then we need to figure out what we're gonna fabricate for this brake handle so we can move it from one tractor to another. But we're gonna start with Stefan's tractor since I go to work. He's gonna be the one here going up on the mountain to get firewood and whatnot. So his tractor is the first candidate to see how this is gonna mount. All right, we're almost done with the brake. So here's my brake handle. If you look over here, I drilled a bigger hole through this side of the steel channel. I put a rubber grommet in there so it wouldn't tear up the cable sheath. On this side, I drilled straight through and I tapped it to an M6. And this fitting right here came off of a bicycle brake caliper. It's threaded to M6, I think it's 1 or 10, I'm not sure. But this is gonna give me adjustability in my cable. Now, there's 2 holes in this brake arm. We're gonna use the bottom one to get the most leverage. Stefan drilled a hole through this 1/4-20 bolt, just big enough for the cable to go through it. So the cable's gonna go through that. We're gonna put the bolt through the hole with the cable through the bolt, put a nut and a lock washer on the opposite side, and when we tighten it down, it'll hold that cable captive. Then we'll be able to tension the cable with this and the adjustment on the brake lever itself. So we should have plenty of throw and plenty of leverage to pull that brake nice and hard. I got a pair of handlebars here just for testing purposes, but we're gonna end up cutting this off and somehow making this either a quick detach or have one on each of our tractors, one of these handlebar pieces, and it can double as a grab bar. But Stefan's got the tires going. Let's see if we can stop. You ready? Here we go. It works. And it's raining like crazy outside right now. So we're about done for tonight. It's coming up on 8:30. And we're gonna go ahead and catch you guys tomorrow.
Daddy, did it. It's a big gun.
All right, go Crush, go. Spin it super fast, Crusher. Slice and dice, Crusher, slice and dice. Ready? All right. All right, everybody, it's the next day. We got this thing all buttoned up last night. If you recall, all this stuff's in place, the caliper. I got the cable set up just right. Everything's good to go. We're gonna get this thing off the sawhorses, flip it around. We're gonna hook it up to Stefan's tractor, and we're gonna get this brake handle mounted to his tractor in such a way that he can use it from his seat. All right, we got Stefan's tractor hooked up to this thing, trying to get a feel for how it's gonna go. I'm gonna take this pair of GT handlebars. Here's the brake lever for it, and we're gonna cut right down in here. And what I'm gonna do is mount the handlebar to the fender next to the seat. Stefan's left-handed, so it's gonna be on his left hand. And we're gonna use this as a base for the handlebar. We'll get the right angle of the cut to make it at the angle he wants it, next to his seat. We're gonna weld it to this piece of steel, and then we're gonna weld that piece of steel to his fender. So that'll give it a bigger footprint, so it'll be stronger. All right, we got the base welded to the handlebar, and Stefan is now figuring out where he likes it the best, where it feels right. What do you think?
Right about here is where it's gonna be.
Right there? Can it go down like a little like that?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta get the whole square washer on there.
Gotta prep that spot right there. Gotta be flat.
Yes. Yeah.
We good right there?
Mm-hmm. I can hold on to this, right?
Yep, hold it exactly where you want it. Make sure it's flat. If beautiful, consistent welds with plenty of heat is what you're looking for, the Hobart 230 Ironman is right for you. It's been a few minutes since we did the last clip, but we made a couple of simple changes. The first thing we did was change out the handlebar grip that I had on here before, the brake lever, for this one, because this one has a hinge where it mounts. That way we can go ahead and run a grip. We're gonna put these ODI roughneck grips that I had in stock from back in my BMX days, made in the USA. The reason we couldn't use a grip before is because the old brake levers you'd have to take the grip off every time to slide this off the front. But because it has a hinge, now we can have a grip. I can switch this brake to my track. So we're gonna switch it from Stefan's to mine so I can feel this thing out and see what is going on. But this is what I was talking about. This brake has a hinge. So now we can just switch the brake handle from one tractor to the other. All right, that was literally the very first time I drove this thing with the brakes on it, because yesterday we tested it out, there was no brakes. But first impressions, it actually works. I can't get it to lock up though, because it doesn't have that much force. The handbrake to that mechanical brake, I guess I had over expectations for that thing. I thought it was gonna be able to like lock these wheels up. It can't do that. But it does create quite a bit of resistance. I can feel it. When I go down that little incline right over there, I can feel the trailer dragging when I go down. And that's what we're looking for. We don't want the trailer to just be able to plow the tractor when we're going downhill. We want it to drag is what we want. Unfortunately, it's been raining for the last 2 days. It rained hard last night and it's been raining most of the day today. And right now our trail is completely muddy. We're not gonna make it up there, not today. So that's gonna be a future video, taking this thing up the mountain and testing it out. But right now, I'm gonna take this thing back and I'm gonna go slow down that incline and see how much of a difference it really makes. And we'll also take it over to the barn hill. I just went down it with the brake. I'm gonna do it without the brake and see how much faster it rolls down. All right, there really isn't a noticeable difference on that because by the time the tractor gets to the bottom of it, the trailer is just starting to go down it. So that's not really a great representation of a downhill, but I can feel the difference. I can also feel the difference when I'm just coasting and coming to a stop. When I use the trailer brakes in conjunction with my tractor, it stops faster and you can feel the trailer putting resistance on the tractor. So that's pretty cool. Let's take it over to the barn hill and see if I can notice. It's a longer incline. That's gonna do it for the video. Like I said, outside, it was raining for the last 2 days here, and the trail is basically not gonna happen anytime before a couple more days from now. So we're gonna do an in-depth logging expedition on this thing. We're gonna take it up the trail and we're gonna get some firewood and bring it down and see how much better this thing works than just us hanging on to it and dragging behind it for dear life. So I think it really worked out great. There's a couple of changes that I thought about after the fact after it was built. And I'm not gonna give those away. I'll bring those up when we modify it further. But, and also like I said, I cannot get the back tires to lock up. It's just not strong enough. So either I need a stronger caliper, a stronger cable with a greater lever so I can apply more force to it, or both. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you're new to the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, I'm Jason.
Stefan.
I'm Jace.
Crusher's in the house. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead. We'll see you on the next one.